Eve, it looks really goofy. You are sharing your Zoom screen so we can see everything twice as kind of a goofy looking thing.
Okay, so maybe I'll stop my share for now, and then I'll just share when I'm going to actually start. Did I do anything?
It went back to the normal Zoom window.
Okay. What if I start my video? Oh, wait a minute.
It also says you're recording.
I am. I am recording. Well, we'll get started pretty soon anyway, and I'll have a presentation up, so that'll be all right. Hi, good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us. We'll get started here in about 4 minutes. I want to get started right on time for us. For folks that have joined us, I would ask you, it looks like everybody mostly has done this, but go ahead and put your first name, last name, and affiliation in your under your actual participant name. So you can rename yourself by going into participants, and then there will be a little more drop down. And that's how you can, oh, excuse me, I'm sorry, there is actually a rename button. You can go ahead and rename yourself that way. And then also do the same in the chat. So you can open up the chat, put your name, first and last, and affiliation of everybody who is joining you, because I'm sure there might be some cases where there are multiple people on a single device. So go ahead and do that for me. Okay, looks like we have 9:30, so I'll go ahead and get started. I'll open up my agenda. Can anybody not see my agenda here? And you all should have a copy of this. Okay, I'll assume that's a yes. Well, good morning, everybody, and thank you very much for joining us today. My name is Eve Adrian. I am the Natural Resource Planner for Lycoming County. And we have 2 hours allocated for this meeting. As always, we don't need to take up the full 2 hours if we don't need to, but just know that we do have that chunk of time dedicated for us today. This is the second time that we will be meeting all of the stakeholders, meeting of the minds. This is a monthly check-in for stakeholders outside of our smaller peer group meetings that we've been doing a lot of planning work around. This meeting is being recorded, just like the kickoff meeting that feels like eons ago. It was the end of January, and so that recording is on the webpage. I have that in the chat. So I will put this recording up onto the webpage along with meeting notes and any meeting materials that we review, so that if you want to go back to it, you may do so. That being said, if you don't want your face to show, go ahead and turn your video off, just in case you wanted to have privacy in that way. So I do have a presentation that I'm going to show, but just know that this agenda should be in your inbox somewhere, and it is just going to follow the presentation. So let me do that now.
Eve, I don't see your screen.
You do not see my screen. How about now?
Yep. Yeah.
There we go. All right. Actually, I take that back. I'm going to turn my video off quickly, and we'll get started here. So like I said a little bit earlier, go ahead and rename yourself to your first and last name and your affiliation, and put all of that information of everybody who is on your device in the chat box as well. It's just easier to take attendance that way, so go ahead and do that. I also wanted to go over some of the Zoom functions that we're going to be using today. Most of you should be pretty familiar with Zoom. We'll be using the chat box. That's the messaging function that Zoom has. It's just right on your bottom panel. And we'll also be using the reactions function, which is also on your bottom panel. You have a limited option of what reactions you can use. But if you are joining us on your phone, it can be found under, it's a more option with 3 dots over top of that. It will be the same for Android and iPhone. In that option, you'll have a menu of the reactions that you can use. So just so you know, we will be using that function today. Only once, so you don't have to be scared if it's something that you're not familiar with. So, okay, I think I took care of all of the housekeeping right off the bat. So let's get started. I have 3 big meeting goals today. I want to ensure that you all understand the CAP milestones and benchmarks that we have before us. So we have specific dates that we'll be submitting drafts for what we're calling cast runs, and that's really just going to be submitting the actions that we have already culminated in our peer groups, and asking the tech folks at DEP to run it through the model and see what numbers we come up with. So we have specific dates for that, and we'll go over those benchmarks. So I want to make sure everybody is aware of that. My second meeting goal is to make sure that we create continuity between peer group communication. We have lots of meetings going on throughout the months, and I want to make sure that this is a platform for everybody to be able to understand what each peer group is doing and coming up with. So that is my second goal for this meeting. My third goal is to begin considering programmatic and policy recommendations. So for our CAP, we have 2 big documents that we'll be responsible for. One is the programmatic and policy recommendations that we'll send to the state, where we say, hey, state, we have these projects that we want to do, but we need certain things to be able to do them most effectively. So it's our way to communicate to the state and come up with recommendations for our projects to be as successful as possible. So while we're looking at these actions to put in our milestones template, our roadmap for planning and implementation, this will be a two-fold process where we're looking at these recommendations. So we'll start to go over that document as well today. And here's our meeting agenda. So we'll go over stakeholder highlights, again, these benchmarks and milestones, peer group updates. We'll talk a little bit about co-benefits. Then we'll have a section for questions or concerns. I'll open up the floor to that. And then we'll go into these programmatic and policy recommendations. And then I'll talk about next steps as we move forward in our infancy planning process. It seems like we started this project a while ago, but we really are still just in the beginning phases of this planning. So we have a lot on our plate in the future moving forward. So this is our meeting agenda today. So I wanted to show you this to remind you all of why you're here and why your engagement is so important. And while you all may be coming from different backgrounds, have different knowledge and skills, or have completely different ideas of how to address water quality, you're all here because you care about the land and the water that you live in and that you love. And that is the most important thing to remember and come back to each and every day. So this is a product of the culmination of all the things that I've heard throughout our planning meetings that we've had with these smaller peer groups. And so I've been taking notes about what skills and what priorities and what values you have. And so what I'm hearing is that you all have technical knowledge of ag, conservation, preservation, restoration, and trails and parks, as well as skills in implementing projects. You all, you have skills in supplying resources like data, personnel, venues for workshops, funding. You have a lot of experience. A lot of you are vets in this process. And you have skills in outreach and planning, generating ideas, and mapping skills. And your priorities include, you want this plan to be proactive. You want it to be reliable, and you want the data to be as accurate as possible. You also want collaboration and partnership, and you want a realistic and implementable plan. Your values include preserving ag land and open space, teaching conservation practices, stewardship, working together and providing support, as well as stream restoration. So you're a stakeholder in this process because your diverse skills, priorities, and values all bring us to this singular goal to be a model for water quality improvement through reliable, replicable, and smart land management practices. And if you're still wondering why you're here and why we want you to be involved, it's because I believe that you can help make a difference in this plan and in this county. And so I really wanted to get this message across to you, all the stakeholders, that maybe you're thinking that you're a little bit too far removed from pollution reduction, but really you are exactly connected to pollution reduction in every facet of your work and your skills and knowledge. And so I wanted to make sure that this message is getting across that you're different, but you're the same in these different ways. So I appreciate your engagement and your support and your interest in this process. And so we're going to get to the reactions now. So based on what you know now, after having gone through, most of you having gone through peer group meetings, and after having seen some of the ideas that you all have come up with, I've sent out the templates for most of these peer groups to be able to see what we're all coming up with. I want to know how you feel in your role as a stakeholder. So go ahead and go into your emoji reactions, and there's like a thumbs up, there's a smiley face, I think. There's a lot of hand clapping and celebratory emojis, but there's also a wow emoji. And so that we're going to go ahead and say that wow emoji is, I'm not sure yet. I'm still unclear. So go ahead and take a minute and see what those reactions are. And I'm going to go ahead and come out of my presentation so I can see. So here, and if you can't find those emojis, go ahead and type in the chat how you're feeling as a stakeholder. Okay. So I'm not seeing anything yet, but we'll keep going. We'll keep plugging along here. And the purpose, I want to make sure that I'm understanding where you all are coming from and how you're feeling as a stakeholder. I think it's important to be able to see where we can lift stakeholders up. So I want to make sure to capture how you all are feeling. So that is why I'm doing this exercise. But while you're doing that, I'm going to go ahead and keep going here. Okay. All right, let's move on to benchmarks and milestones. So as a reminder, Lycoming County has a goal of reducing around 1.2 million pounds per year of nitrogen and 76,000 pounds per year of phosphorus by the year 2025. I went over this in our kickoff meeting and in all of our peer group meetings, but I just want to put that up there as a reminder of our high-level goal. And while we are just in the planning phase right now, just entering into the planning phase, we've already accomplished so much, and I thank you all for that. So here's a little graphic of where we are in our timeline and process. Another graphic that I showed in our kickoff meeting, but I have modified it just a little bit to show where we are. So this is a revolving door process. So we're convening our countywide action team members or peer groups. We're identifying local priorities and initiatives and identifying local resources. So we're doing this all on a revolving door basis, all going on right now, and that is where we will be for a little while. We will start to select and report actions in the future, but for right now, this is where we're at. And here are our benchmarks. So through March to September, we'll be conducting planning meetings with peer groups. It turns out about 1 a week we'll be having. And we'll also be doing these cast model runs or drafts of the plan. So our first draft will be April 29th. So that is at the end of next month. We'll be culminating all of the actions that we have already, submitting them, and seeing what the numbers shake out to be, how much reduction we'll actually have from the actions that we choose. Our second draft will be due June 24th. And a third draft will be due July 29th. I want to just let everybody know that this is an internal timeline that we've developed. This is not coming from the state. It's something that we have decided to establish as a way to make sure that we stay on track to have our final submission, which is September 30th of this year. So, so this is our little internal timeline of what we'll be looking for in our benchmarks and milestones. So peer group updates. We have right now 7 working peer groups. We have the Ag, Resources, Watershed, Policy, Recreation, Municipal, and Implementation. So our Ag peer group is embedded in local and regional agricultural communities, has expertise in agricultural best management practices, or BMPs. And we had our first meeting on March 2nd. The resources group supplies knowledge of funding sources, technical assistance, personnel, and also considers the resources that would be needed or available for project implementation. And we had that meeting on March 4th. Watershed, knowledgeable of watershed ecosystem services and could supply projects, policies, and programmatic recommendations. And that group met on March 9th. Policy considers policies, programs, outreach, and resources that could be implemented. That was March 16th. And our recreation peer group just met on Tuesday of this week. So that group is connected to outdoor recreation and stewardship and is able to provide projects, policies, and outreach with the specific outdoor recreation framework. And then our municipal group and implementation group has not met yet. So our municipal group will meet March 29th, so that's just this Monday. They provide expertise in potential outreach and education, projects, policies, ordinances, etc. And implementation will be focused on how CAP actions would be implemented and potentially prioritized. So I wanted to just highlight here that this is a specific way that we've come up with to take this large stakeholder group and make it into smaller pieces to make planning a little bit easier. If you are in one of these peer groups and you have an idea that maybe, I don't want to say deviates, but for the purpose of this exercise, deviates from the topic that you're in, feel free to do so. If you have something that you think would be very helpful and it's in a recreation, it would be like a recreation idea, but you're in an ag peer group, feel free to bring that up. It's important that we cross-pollinate these ideas. And just because you're in a specific peer group doesn't mean that you can't have ideas potentially outside of that peer group realm. So these are the peer groups that we're working in right now. This is open and flexible. I anticipate this looking a little bit different months from now than it does today. So for right now, this is where we're at with our peer groups. Okay, so our peer group planning meetings, this is a housekeeping and reminders. Meetings can be scheduled during early morning, late afternoon, evening, and weekends if necessary, and not just during the 8:30 to 5 timeframe. I understand people work for a living, and we want to make sure that we get as much feedback and input as possible. And so to do that, that means that we will have to accommodate people's schedules. And so whatever that looks like for you or somebody you know, or a group of somebodies that you know, just let us know and we'll be happy to accommodate that schedule. Meetings can also be held in person with COVID precautions as they, of course, will change and adapt. I think that people work best face-to-face. And so however we can do that safely in the future and future meetings will be very welcome. Zoom is great and all, but it won't just be a Zoom platform for us. Upcoming meetings, go ahead and see the webpage for what I'm calling the skeleton schedule of peer group meetings. This is the skeleton 5 meetings per peer group schedule with the expectation that we'll have more. But that is just embedded right into the webpage. I haven't done this yet, but future additional meetings will be on the planning page calendar. So there's a main planning page calendar. Go ahead, look at that for additional meetings. Like I said, haven't done it yet, but I will very soon. And for the meetings, come prepared and engaged for discussion. These meetings, the peer group meetings are intended to be very active engagement, talking back and forth. I think that the peer group meetings as we move forward will be very lively. So just know that those meetings are for engagement for you. So just as housekeeping. The template highlights and themes. So for all of the meetings that we've had so far, this is my tightened down kind of ideas of what's been coming up in these actions that we've been coming up with. So for the ag peer group meeting, There's been a lot of cover crop ideas, no-till ideas, a lot of momentum for funding and incentive programs, and education and outreach. Resources, a lot of ideas for interagency collaboration, expanding technical assistance, and education and outreach. And that's going to be a common theme. Lots of people think that expanded education and outreach is a good idea for us. So for Watershed, collaborate with other groups, improve project tracking, and there it is again, education and outreach. Policy, updating related ordinances to watershed management and runoff. Plan concurrence, education and outreach. And for the rec group that we had just on Tuesday, more plantings, trail, park, and greenway implementation, and plan concurrence. So this is, I do have a culminated group of projects, but this is just our slimmed down version of that, so that you are aware of what actually is going on and what the common themes are for everybody. So now that you've seen what others have been thinking as you've been going through these peer group meetings and starting to think about what can be done, what questions or concerns do you have moving forward still?
Eve, I've got a question.
Yes.
There's been recent attention about the increase in microplastics getting into our waterways. Does this plan address microplastics?
No, it does not, Jerry. But I have seen those articles, and that is a growing concern. I think it was 100% of the water that was tested in PA had microplastics. Is that correct from my memory?
Yes,
yeah, so that will be something that we'll need to address in the future. If it's something that we find is important to include in this plan, we'll fit it in as best as possible, but that's going to be an initiative moving forward, absolutely.
And I would suggest that it needs to probably be in the a couple of the teams outreach. We need to get a public messaging out to people to be more diligent about taking care of those plastics, and even little things like picking up something that they see on the ground when they're out for a walk, or and making sure that they do proper waste disposal.
Mm-hmm. Yes, thank you. Jenny, let me know what's going on in the chat, because I have my screen share. I'm not able to actually see what's going on.
Sure thing.
And if you have no questions or concerns right now, or a question or concern that you don't want to share necessarily with the group, I want to ask you what value you see this clean water plan bringing to our region.
Although fishing season is coming up, I'm not a fisherman, but there's a growing interest in that. But also related is that people value these rivers and streams. Each year, for the last couple of years, our Susquehanna Greenway partnerships paddling sojourns have been sold out. Mm-hmm. And so people enjoy getting out and doing a little paddling or boating on the river. And my wife and I have devoted most of our Sundays to visiting state parks. And so far, we've been to 51 of the 121 Pennsylvania state parks. And I got to noticing that all of the parking lots are jammed or overflowing. And I was looking at where the license plates are from. Maryland, Virginia, Delaware, New Jersey, New York, Ohio, and others. And so we are fortunate to live in a area that is a real attraction because of our waterways and our hiking trails.
Mm-hmm.
And therefore we have to keep our streams in good quality.
Yes, absolutely. Yes, Pennsylvania is such a recreation hub, and that's an important conversation when we start talking about co-benefits in just a little bit here and in the future. How these different topics intersect, where having good clean water, pristine streams, not limited litter content, because I doubt you'll really ever be able to eliminate it completely, how that increases recreation and the quality of people's recreation.
Right.
So that is important.
All right, we have 2 comments in the chat. We have one about being important to improve water quality in our area and between outdoor tourism and our own need for improved water quality. And then we have another one for there's a benefit in networking between different groups, agencies, and people, because a lot of them have overlap in their goals and missions, and that could lead to future partnerships.
Gotcha. Yes, very good point. Thank you. Anything else? Questions, concerns, and what value you see this clean water plan bringing to our region?
I'd like to pick up on what Dan commented. I agree with him, and so I would like to offer that we network with the Pennsylvania Wilds planning team, and I continue to chair one of the committees of the Pennsylvania Wilds, and also with our Pine Creek Watershed Council, which is still active.
Yes, thank you. Okay. If there is nothing else, we can go ahead and move on. Okay, so co-benefits. I wanted to take a little bit of time to talk about co-benefits. It's a technical term for a simple concept that we probably have already been thinking about. I've talked a lot about it. I've mentioned it several times, but I wanted to go into a little bit of depth. So I'm going to discuss 3 different topics related to co-benefits I want to talk about: tree canopies, wetlands, and stream health. And I stole slide content from a Chesapeake Bay slideshow about co-benefits. So tip of the hat to Chesapeake Bay. So for tree canopies, a potential outcome for tree canopies is to continually increase urban tree canopy capacity to provide air quality, water quality, and habitat benefits throughout the country. So implementing these conservation and restoration practices include agricultural forest buffers, forest conservation, and urban forest buffers. An additional benefit, and this is really the co-benefit, that intersectionality of these specific practices that we can employ, is having increased habitat biodiversity, increased air quality, improved land use methods, improving fish habitats downstream, healthy watersheds, and improved forest buffers. So what should I know about tree canopies? Tree canopies provide numerous benefits to human and watershed health. The shading powers of tree canopies produce energy savings to homeowners, businesses, local governments, and utilities. Trees are the green infrastructure of communities, and green stormwater infrastructure is designed to mimic the function of a natural forest. Trees intercept and slow the delivery of stormwater runoff to local waterways while filtering and taking up pollutants. All right, wetlands. So a potential outcome to wetlands is continually increasing the capacity of wetlands to provide water quality and habitat benefits throughout the watershed. These activities may occur at any land use, including urban, but primarily occur in ag or natural landscapes. Implementing these conservation and restoration practices include just putting in wetlands or restoring wetlands, including wet ponds, or having an urban forest buffer. And these additional benefits include increased duck habitat populations, improved climate adaptations, flood control and mitigation, groundwater recharge and infiltration, and recreation. And I believe there was a recent case study in Schuylkill County where there was a wetland that was restored into a natural floodplain, and it actually reduced flooding by a significant margin. And I will have to get that story out. It was just, I think, last month that came out, but just a local case study to prove the benefits of having improved wetlands. So,
Eve, that was the Pine Grove area.
That was Pine Grove area. Gotcha.
Eve, this is Jerry.
Yes.
I'm a little slow in picking up on the previous slide, but street trees. One additional benefit I think you should list in this plan is that street trees add to the livability of our towns and the city of Williamsport. And street trees help with stormwater absorption, and even just narrow little rain gardens can be useful too.
Mm-hmm.
And I think more and more we're seeing a little uptick in the renting of downtown apartments by professionals who work here, or we've got decent access to the internet, and many of these young professionals don't have to report to an office, but so long as they've got internet access, they can choose to live and work from their apartment.
Mm-hmm.
So the street trees, in conjunction with bike paths, help to also do traffic calming. And I was invited last week to meet with Liz Mealy, who is on city council, and she wanted to pick my brain about some of the stuff that we're working on with Susquehanna Greenway. And I think you're going to see from city council a growing commitment to what is the different tools for like bike paths and street trees, and improving walkability and bikeability of the streets and sidewalks in Williamsport. That all goes to enhancing the quality of the community, as well as having a measurable benefit on the water impacts.
Mm-hmm. Yes, good points. Any other comments from anybody else? Okay. All right. So what should I know about wetlands? Wetlands provide areas of infiltration for water and runoff to connect with the groundwater, thus filtering pollutants and toxins and recharging below ground reserves. So it's like a sponge. It's like this natural sponge that just takes pollutants and filters it through its own little spongy soil content. So it also creates vital habitat patches for wildlife and provide hunting and recreational opportunities with economic benefits to surrounding communities. Wetlands are threatened by direct land use conservation, as well as development and land use changes that affect groundwater flow patterns, which can isolate wetlands from the rest of the landscape or permanently removing the source of water. When functioning together, wetland and stream complexes should be considered a powerful resource for complete upland filtration and habitat benefits. Very, very powerful. All right, and lastly, our stream health. A potential outcome for stream health is continually improving stream health and function throughout the county. Implementing these conservation and restoration practices include forest conservation, agricultural forest buffers, urban forest buffers, and urban stream restoration. And these additional benefits to these outcomes include increased brook trout habitat, healthy watersheds, forest buffers, flood control and mitigation, and having protected lands. So, all in all, what should I know about stream health? Healthy streams and floodplains provide benefits for water filtration, flood mitigation, and recreational opportunities, while removing public safety and infrastructure hazards. Threats to streams include increased water volume and velocity due to land use changes, channelization and erosion from human development, as well as alteration of habitat features and water quality that reflect riparian development. While functioning together, stream and wetland complexes should be considered a powerful resource for complete upland filtration and habitat benefits. So therefore, co-benefits can be powerful. And it's easy, it's like I said, it's something that we're probably already thinking about and something that we're cognizant of as we're making decisions for our land management and what practices we decide to actually implement into this plan and into our everyday lives and what we're doing in our own lives and in our professional lives. So questions, go ahead and put this in the chat. Let's go ahead and do this one at a time. What examples of co-benefits have you seen throughout your life? It doesn't have to be in Lycoming County, but just what co-benefits as in your travels have you seen personally? Go ahead and put that in the chat. Anything coming in yet, Jenny?
I see someone said that they would like the co-benefits of our recreations that, they just think the co-benefits of our recreation areas are extremely important.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And then we have a comment from Corey saying that especially given, where'd it go? Given the rise in outdoor recreation that we've seen coming out of the pandemic. And Jerry is saying he's watched the Better Streams where NPC did stream bank plantings in other counties. And then stream plantings on various waterways. And our hazard mitigation efforts also provide many opportunities for additional efforts.
What co-benefits would you like to see in our county?
Oh, we have one more. Stream bank stabilization projects reduce sediment inputs, encourage installation of buffer plantings, bring renewed awareness to outdoor recreation, which can prompt additional participation by local residents.
Excellent. Excellent.
Yeah. Feel free to unmute yourself as well. I know we have a lot of people on the call, but that could also work too, if that's easier for some folks.
Eve, this is Shannon. I think one of the efforts that we need to, and I think we talked about this yesterday too, is we need to look at what we've already done and how can we add the benefits to that, not just recreation, not just hazard mitigation projects. You know, there's a lot of things out there already. If it's we're doing a street paving project or whatever the project is, how can we add a co-benefit to it?
Yes. Anything else?
And we have a comment from Jerry about reassessing parking requirements to reduce impervious surfaces and move away from the first Friday parking standard.
Co-benefits you'd like to see.
Excuse me, I misquoted that. I didn't mean to say first Friday. I meant to say Black Friday.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Because I'm guilty. Our Lycoming Mall parking area was based on first Friday densities on parking, and now just look at the evaporation of all those businesses from the Lycoming Mall. So we've got a big issue and maybe even a decent opportunity there.
Okay. Anything else? Going once. Going twice. Okay. Let's go ahead and move on. Thank you all for your responses. Very much appreciated.
We have a couple more comments coming in at the last minute.
Nice.
Yep, we have flood buyout properties turned into community gardens. I know, for example, I have a community garden on a flood buyout property, so I could speak to those being great. And then the continued comment over there says that he has had the opportunity to include scout troops and other groups to get involved in our projects, provide educational outreach. And the final comment was Tali, who was in touch with a professor at a local college who did a research study on the parking issue, and that she could try to make a connection.
Awesome. Thank you all. All right. Let's go ahead and move on. Okay. Now let's start talking about programmatic and policy recommendations. So this is something that we have kind of started thinking about, especially in our peer groups. Let me pull it up. In our roadmap document, our progress and milestones template, where we have started thinking about projects. This is kind of already priming us for these questions that we have, where we're saying to ourselves, well, if I had, $3 million more dollars, I then would be able to implement 10 more stream restoration projects, or if I had
Just a minute, I'm only working at a time.
If I had 2 more full-time staff, then I would be able to employ 3 more projects on the ground or improve 3 more programs that I already have going on.
Cinnamon sugar on this? Or just butter? Oh, cinnamon sugar.
Can we all go ahead and mute ourselves there? There's a little bit of background noise. Thank you.
Right.
So we've already been thinking about this as we've been planning. And what we need to really start thinking about is what resources we have available.
Whoops, sorry, hold on, I muted you, Eve. Hey, Eve, could you unmute yourself? I accidentally muted you.
There we go. There seems to be some background noise, so whomever has their microphone on, let's go ahead and mute ourselves there. Thank you. Okay. All right. So what we need to ask ourselves are these if-then scenarios. So if we're thinking about if we had X thing, X number of dollars, X number of resources, then we'd be able to do an additional improvement to what we're already doing or what we want to be doing. And so the actual template that this is referring to is this programmatic recommendations template. But a lot of this is duplicative of what we're already looking at in our roadmap document. So what it has is our potential implementation challenges, potential recommendations on improvement, and resources technical and financial. So because we mostly already have this information, I wanted to pull up this culminated group of projects that we'd already that we've already included in our peer group meetings. So I picked some projects at random for us to think about, but I actually wanted to see if you all had specific ideas that you wanted to bring up before I start actually picking projects for us. So we can either do this as popcorn style, just unmuting yourself and including ideas, or putting it in the chat. Whatever works best for you will make me happy. So let's start thinking about those if-then scenarios for these projects. If we had more resources in a specific area, what in addition could we do to improve the action, program, policy, project? I know in our peer group meetings, we had talked a lot about having additional funding for things, maintenance especially. For the rec peer group, maintenance is something that is always needed for a project. Additional staff for things. Give you a minute to think about it. Right now, I'm going through all of these projects slowly that folks have come up with. And in our heading here, we're looking specifically at recommendations and resources that we need.
We have a comment for maintenance.
Mm-hmm. What specifically about maintenance?
Doesn't say. We also have a comment about a grant coordinator to help with project funding and coordination between entities.
Hmm. Gotcha. This is going to be important to consider when we actually start moving into implementation. So this is a thought exercise to make implementing projects easier, more streamlined, more effective, improving outreach for specific things. So as we move into implementation, what would make implementing things easier? I'll give it another minute or so. And then I'll start picking specific projects. Just at
Steve,
random.
we also talked about potentially having a continuous AmeriCorps or VISP person that could keep track and provide that continuation of what's happening and updating of projects and outreach.
Mm-hmm. Yes, thank you.
And there's a comment about an evaluation of the equitable distribution of environmental assets and disassets of all these implementation projects.
That's really good. Say that one more time for me, actually.
Oh, sure. An evaluation of the equitable distribution of environmental assets and disassets of all these implementation projects.
That is very good. I am very pleased about this paying attention to equitable distribution. I think that that is something that's very important for us to consider as we move forward in this project. So thank you.
And again, feel free to unmute yourself if you don't want to type something in. Here's another one, Eve. It's that there is an evaluation form to grade prioritize stream bank projects. Back to maintenance, you can't write maintenance into a grant. If maintenance is required, you need to write another grant.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. About some ag projects. Scoot on up. Cover crops, no-till, buffers, stream restoration. Nutrient management, more education and outreach. What additional resources would make these projects more effective?
Do we have anybody on the call from the Lycoming County Conservation District who can tell us what they're doing?
I know we have Greg and Tim with us.
Hi, this is Rod. Can you hear me?
Yep, I can hear you, Rod.
Okay. As far as the ag stuff, we had talked about throwing together a cover crop program, incentive, pay them X amount of dollars for planting cover crops. That's one of the biggest bang for the buck ag projects out there. Now, funding would be for all ag projects and all projects in general. Is there's a limited pot of money, and you're going to have everybody tier 1, 2, 3, and 4 fighting for the same pot of money.
Mm-hmm.
And most likely it's going to go to tier 1 and 2, and 3 and 4 will be like the redheaded stepchildren.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. And that goes for a lot of these projects too. It's very competitive. We'll all be competing for the same pots of money. And so that is going to be stretched thin in no time.
We're continuing our mission of looking for projects and working with landowners as we always have. We're always looking for stream projects that we can take a look at and see if there's anything we can do. We have some big ag projects coming up in the next couple of years. So we're just basically continuing our mission, but now it supports this CAP effort and can be put down into this plan. So we're moving like we have been.
And more staff and more funding would make that mission improved.
If we get more funding, we would need more staff. If we don't get more funding, then the extra staff might not be as necessary.
Mm-hmm.
This is Ryan Cuck with NRCS. We have funding available to assist with projects. The mechanism of the way our agency is set up is there needs to be applications from the landowners for us to potentially assist. And it's a variety of projects any of the projects are to address resource concerns. So that can be anything from cover crops to, manure storages. And the funding that we have is limited. It is a competitive process, but one of the things that we have had some discussions with the Conservation District on is to do some joint outreach events. So there are some ways to potentially reach and educate landowners on the importance and benefits of some of these things where they may voluntarily adopt some of these items on their own. Funding is also, it sometimes is the driving factor. They need that funding to take a step forward with some of these things. But with some others, maybe they can take some of those steps without funding assistance. So we can try to reach some folks that way as well.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha.
Eve, this is Jackie Kerstetter. Just to follow up with some of the comments from Rod, Tim, and Ryan, one of the things I don't see on this template that you have up right now are some of those bigger ag BMPs that Tim and Ryan were alluding to, like manure storages or stream bank livestock exclusion fencing, pasture management, heavy use areas, that type of thing. So, there is reference up here to cover crops and no-till. But one of the things I don't see on here are some of those other bigger ag BMPs that have the potential and it sounds like too, have some planning to be implemented within the county. So you may want to revisit that and maybe, you know, just check in with the conservation district to see what could be added to that list.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Jackie.
Eve, I've got one other suggestion.
Go ahead.
Our Pine Creek Watershed Council has, for a long time, had water dogs. And those water dogs are citizens who will go and take a little container and do water sampling periodically on the tributaries and main stem of Pine Creek. And so I think that's a way of engaging citizens to pay attention to the water qualities in the tributaries and main streams and watch it year to year.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha. Where would they do the samples, Jerry?
It varies. And so it kind of depends on, well, I think I'm not one of the water dogs, but I can refer you to Jim Weaver, who is retired now from the Tioga County Planning, and he's still active and helped to get the water dog program started. So, and I can give you his contact information offline.
Excellent. Thank you, Jerry.
All right, we have a comment from Mel about considering reestablishing county-level stormwater coordination to work with MS4 municipalities to better tabulate what is being done regionally to meet not only individual municipal goals, but keep track of them at a county level to count towards this plan. Coordinate educational outreach so the public better understands the need and reason for BMPs to be established.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a lot of outreach and education. Lots of opportunity there, for sure. Thank you, Mel. Anything else on the ag front? Okay. How about, expanding outreach and education regarding permit processes and procedures? How about that one? And piggybacking on that one, how about improving and expanding technical assistance?
Eve, this is Jackie Kerstetter again. One of the things I've heard Tier 1 and Tier 2 counties had done in regarding to permitting is to request regularly scheduled meetings with regional staff to review permitting requirements, status, pre-planning meetings, so that they could expedite the process. So, you know, that might be something to write into this document, making that request so that you can have regularly scheduled meetings to address project permitting. So it's not holding up a project or slowing things down.
Mm-hmm. That's a great idea. Yes. Anything else there? Or any questions you have about these?
There's a comment from Greg about plans are great and are required. This is from the ag end, but they need to make sure that they are being implemented.
Mm-hmm. And what would ensure that implementation would be effective? So going back to that if then, if I had X, then I'd be able to do Y. What would make implementation easier and more effective?
And Greg is saying boots on the ground.
Boots on the ground, I love it.
So Greg, technically, are you saying that your office would be open to hosting more staff?
That is a yes. Greg, you could unmute yourself as well if you'd like.
Yeah, we were talking about it yesterday, and one of my main focuses is, other than the fact that I was born 30 years too late, is we sit behind these desks too much. Now that's a necessary evil, because in order to get the plans done that we're talking about, you have to be behind the desk. But just something as simple as getting out there and people knowing the faces and who you're working with makes a huge difference. People become cynical when, I'm dealing with this guy today and 6 months later, I call in and that person's gone. Or, you deal with somebody and then it goes a year and a half, 2 years until you see somebody again. So the more presence we can have out in the public, which goes back to the education and outreach, the better. But unfortunately, for some of us, we're just tied down to this desk.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, Greg, looking at your picture, I thought you were out in the field.
I wish.
Is that a painting on the back of your desk?
Yeah, that's the window I look out to. Wish I was out there today.
I think that's something that we also run to in at the county, because we have some performance guidelines or performance regulations in our ordinances, and we have to rely upon people asking us, why did somebody take out all their landscaping, or why did this person do this? And we're always in a reactive mode rather than being proactive.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Anything else regarding technical assistance or expanding outreach?
We have a comment from Brett. If there was less paperwork involved, these programs would be more inviting.
Nice. Thank you, Brett.
I think that's for every program we do.
So what can we do to change that? What specific steps can we do to maybe streamline the process?
I think what Jackie brought out was the coordination of permitting and things. If we can coordinate more of our efforts so that it's an actual process rather than go here, go there, go somewhere else.
Yep, that's a good point. What else?
We have a comment from Leslie. Over the next few weeks, beginning on March 30th, PennVest will be hosting a series of virtual outreach sessions highlighting eligibility, the types of funding available, and how to apply. And she's included the link. So that's one resource that's available.
Excellent. Thank you, Leslie. Very helpful. What else? What else can improve and streamline permitting specifically? On any level.
I think maybe better data.
Gotcha. What data specifically?
Well, if we have better access, like we were discussing with the ag group and some of the other groups, you know, we're trying to put a plan together, and it's difficult to see, you know, who's really affected by some of these issues. Just improving our mapping, improving our data, improving. We've talked about, you know, the model is great for a concept, but you're putting in things, and you're not. It's not actual real world. So better data, better mapping, better testing in our area for water quality to make sure that we are truly improving things, and or maybe we're actually improving things better than what the model says.
Yes. Yes, good points. Are there any other comments?
I was glad to see that you incorporated a comment I had made about the balance between large-scale solar farms and the clear cutting that involves, and the other environmental impacts. So I think where those kinds of large-scale solar farms are proposed, and I presume most of you saw the announcement by Governor Wolf that he intends for Pennsylvania to be the largest generator of solar power of any state in the United States. And while that is shocking and surprising because of our climate situation here in northern Pennsylvania, I've seen the large-scale solar farms down in southern Pennsylvania. And of course, the one is proposed in West Keating Township in Clinton County on clearing 3,200 acres of forest land to put in a solar farm. So I think we need to have standards that where solar arrays are installed, they need to definitely have vegetation under the solar panels. Doesn't have to be mowed, but have the right kind of vegetation under those that will help to absorb the runoff and some way a partial mitigation of the tree clearing that was done to put in those solar panels.
Mm-hmm.
All right, and we have a comment from Dan. His guess is some permitting can't be bypassed or streamlined, so using data, as said, to get the best bang for your buck in terms of water quality improvement per dollar, but also per staff effort and permit support for planning. So that would be his recommendation.
Gotcha. Awesome. Thank you, Dan. Okay, so we've been talking about outreach. So there's another facet to this where we do public campaigns with the effort to change landowner behavior. So one of the ideas was having more education and outreach about reducing stream impacts like littering and like, I think it was Rod, I think you had the Know Before You Pour, or maybe that was Marita campaign, working with kids on programs, litter pickups, trash bingo, cleanup work. So what specifically could we do to ensure that this is an effective action that we do? What would we need to make this more effective?
I think we've discussed some of those items, Eve. We've talked about doing education about fertilization, because some of the worst offenders are the people who are fertilizing their lawns. And also, you know, everybody's like rain gardens, but there's other ways to do things on site that are just as beneficial but don't require as much maintenance.
Yep. Hi, I'm Joe Radley. I'm out here at the Conservation District. I'm a director, also a member of Trout Unlimited and a watershed association. One thing I think that we need to do is go out into the field and not just have something like at the county fair. But what we'll do is we'll go over to, just to pick an example, you know, Muncie Creek. And not just do it in Muncie, but head out and have like a fair, a mini fair for people to come to. And yes, have food that'll draw them in and get them involved. And about the educational programs and the many concepts and what's going on with this thing. Why are we doing all of this new stuff and coming up with all these new procedures and everything, and talk to the people in the areas, in the actual communities that are affected by like Muncie Creek or the Royal Sock, because their needs are different and what they're perceiving is different, and explain the process that they have to go through and listen to their complaints, because there's a lot of complaints. And I think there's another group out there that is being missed in this process, which is all the camp owners. There's a lot of camps, especially on headwater areas and in the forest in Lycoming County, that only see seasonal or limited use, and they don't have any involvement with what we're doing up here until some emergency happens. And there are, I think, a significant impact on some of the headwater streams that then affect the larger streams.
Yes, that is a really great point. Thank you for joining us and making that comment. That's helpful.
Could I pick up on Joe's comment?
Yes, absolutely.
I like what he's saying, and I think that maybe some mini fair events, and also getting a good exhibit at the Lycoming County Fair. And I heard on the news this morning that they are going to go forward with the county fair this year, which had to be canceled last year due to COVID. And a good exhibit there would help connect with a lot of the rural community folks who tend to frequent the county fair.
Some of the additional opportunities could be actually going to some of the day camps that are throughout the county and doing hands-on with the kids to show them how things can be done or what's the benefit. I know, you know, I'm sure that there are things already being done in the area, but if we can expand upon them.
Good idea.
All right, Eve, there's a couple more comments in the chat box. One is from Mike. He says grassroots groups often need assistance filling out permit forms. Too much of the planning, permitting, and assessment money gets used up administratively and never gets to the actual project. So that's one comment. And then another one from Holly is to consider bringing in the humanities, art, music, and et cetera, to communicate the message. She also says, also apply tried and true community-based social marketing theory to learn the real barriers to action that you want people to take.
Yes, thank you, Holly.
And then Lori says, reach out to schools.
Gotcha. Is that Lori Douglas?
Yes.
Awesome. Hi, Lori. Thank you for joining us, and thank you for that comment.
Eve, this is like to pick up on Tally's comment. First Friday events are going to resume now, and it'd be very good to reach people we don't ordinarily connect with, to have an exhibit table along the sidewalk in downtown at the First Friday events.
Yes. Yes, yes, yes. Thank you, Jerry.
Eve, Jackie Kerstetter again. Another audience that you may be able to touch base with that maybe not in a normal situation would be those wineries, breweries. They all need high quality water to create their product.
Yes,
And
yes.
I've seen, good participation by in other counties. I know Columbia County Conservation District has done some outreach activities with local, like I said, breweries, wineries, and there's also coffee. All products that need high quality water, and you may be able to touch base with the new audience and have them understand their impacts on water quality, but on their actions. So and another one, maybe even restaurant owners, if they are buying local produce, using locally raised meats, that type of thing, the produce, livestock, all require healthy, clean water sources to be able to get that product to the table. So, restaurants, wineries, breweries, coffee houses, that type of thing may be an opportunity for some new audiences.
Gotcha. That's helpful. Thank you.
Eve, I'll volunteer to help do outreach to the wine.
Yeah, do a tour.
All right, we have a couple more comments. We have one from Anne in Du Bois Town. She's in charge of the Balloon Fest in Lycoming County for the vendors, and she could let a group come here and do activities for kids to educate. So let her know. She's also doing the Fourth Fridays in Muncie, so contact her. And Corey is saying that Columbia County Conservation District has done good water, good wine, or good water, good coffee programs, and they might be a good one to contact to see what worked. And then, there's another comment about the Columbia County Good Water, Good Life program, so they could share ideas.
Awesome. Thank you. I like it.
Yeah, Eve, there was actually, now I don't know that they do it anymore, but it used to be the Saucony Creek Brewery. They actually named one of their beers, Stonefly, after, and they were actually donating like a portion of the sales to the improvement of water quality in the area, because to highlight the fact, that water quality is so important to their product.
Yes.
So, along that type of campaign could be very interesting.
Yes, I agree. I like that a lot. I like it.
Eve, one of the things that we are concerned about is that, hold on, I'm getting.
Was that Brett just speaking?
Can you hear me?
Keep going.
One of the things that people are so removed from farming that everything the farmer does is automatically wrong for the water.
Say that one more time. maybe try to get closer to the mic.
Can you hear me now?
Sounds like it might still be coming in and out a little bit.
All right, well, while we're waiting for him, we have a couple more comments. One is that, Tally is saying that, just a note of caution that just awareness and education alone don't lead to behavior change, which is important to know, so that there might be some other strategies to consider beyond those approaches. And we did have another one that there might be some various customer appreciation meetings, and other kind of private sector events that could be approached.
Gotcha. Yeah, that is a really good point, Tally. Awareness alone may not lead to behavior change. And that's the tough part, because it's very individual and it takes a long time for some behavior change to be seen. And that's where perseverance, long-term programs will come into play. So that's a good point.
I think too, Eve, I think we need to highlight those that are doing it right.
Mm-hmm.
Because we do have a lot of people, farmers, municipalities, we have a lot of projects out there that are doing a lot of good things, and we kind of need a marketing to show, hey, this is what's happening in our community, and these people are doing it right, and this is what they produce or they make or they whatever it is that they're doing, but they're keeping water quality in their project in some way and helping it.
Yeah, Shannon, you were saying before that Lycoming County just does not do the best job of showcasing its good work. And I think that that's important to note and to work on in the future. Being able to find projects and showcase them, and we deserve to brag. We deserve to brag about the good things that are going on here. And so that's going to be important moving forward, I think.
All right, and we have Brett's comment. He says, teach people that every time you see a farmer applicating something, it's not ruining the watershed. So thanks, Brett.
Yes, thank you, Brett.
I think that goes along with the idea that a lot of our farmers have plans in place, and we know some of them don't follow it, but a lot of them do, and that's highlighting. We need to highlight the work that's being done.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
This is Ryan Cuck again with NRCS, and it is something that we have done in the past, but producers aren't always the most willing to share their successes. But it is something that we did talk in the Ag Committee. I mentioned to Eve, and also we have been discussing with the Conservation District about doing some field days and trying to spread that message, because you're correct. There are folks out there that are doing a lot of good things. And so it is something we're working on, and we'll have some more information here in the near future.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Thank you, Ryan. Let's move on to planting projects. What could we do here? There's a lot of ideas here, and I know it shows up a couple of times in separate columns, or rows rather, in this big document, but I think there are a lot of good ideas around expanding these planting projects. Does anyone have any comments about that?
we at the district for the first time this year are getting the Keystone 10 million trees, and actually our tubes and stakes arrived this morning.
Nice.
We're getting somewhere around 1,300 trees and shrubs that we're planting on several properties around the county this spring. So we'll see how that goes, but that's pretty exciting new program for us.
Yes. Awesome.
Eve, some of these plantings could be where we look at some of the co-benefits. If we have a project, can we add planting to it? If we have a quality issue, you know, can we get a couple people, for instance, let's say we have a known area where we've got an issue along a stream. If it's upstream from a water supplier or some other entity that it affects their water quality, maybe we could form partnerships.
Yes, good point. Anything else here?
Okay, all right.
Yep, there's one more comment about public school outreach to see if Lycoming County schools are participating in the Be Wet and/or, I don't know what these acronyms are. There's funding from NOAA specifically for the Chesapeake Bay school districts in PA. They want to give more money to the PA schools in the Bay for development of these programs. And then there's some ambassadors program. Oh, wait, there's a bunch of comments. And then Brett is saying, whatever happened to every child used to bring a pine tree seedling home from school to plant and watch that grow? I remember that. Yeah. And then there's and then there's more comments about the 10 million tree plantings could be an opportunity for media attention, which could bring light to the county's CAP initiative.
Yes.
And then, there it is, the meaningful watershed education programs. And then Mel is saying, as we move forward, considering at least quarterly educational outreach to public in newsletters and public meetings that cover what is being done locally, we could highlight existing projects.
Thank you, Mel. Yes, we have. I'm glad you brought the newsletter up. We are doing a monthly newsletter. It'll come out at the last weekday of the month. So our first one will be coming out March 31st. There's 31 days in March. Yes, so March 31st will be our first one. And so that is something that we're working on. And if you do have any ideas like that one, Mel, perfect content for the newsletter, let me know, and I would love to showcase it. It's really intended for stakeholders and people who would be interested, landowners, any other constituents, to keep privy on what's going on with the CAP process internally. But it's also a platform to showcase good work and to showcase good data and good mapping. So that is something that we are doing and look forward to expanding on in the future. So thank you for that.
All right, we've got another comment from Anne in Boys Town about partnerships with local restaurants as well as landscapers would be good too, such as community garden, farm to fresh to table concept, and teaching from landscapers on proper plant for vegetation near streams.
Yes, very good point. Okay. Are there any questions about this process, about the documents, about what we've been talking about so far? What questions do you have? I'll give it a minute or two. Anything at all?
And there's a comment about schools. This is from Rod. Schools being a tough nut to crack because unfortunately, unless it directly relates to standardized testing requirements, it doesn't get much consideration.
Mm-hmm. Yes, absolutely. I will attest to that. Okay. Anything else? Going once. Going twice. Okay. Well, I think that this was a very helpful discussion, and I do very much look forward to talking about this more in depth moving forward.
Oh, wait, we have one more from Mel. Until the pandemic is over, 300 third grade high school students spent field days at the Waterdale Environmental Center at the Williamsport Water Authority property. These programs met the environmental education standards. Oh, and yeah, have involved 6 local school districts.
Nice.
So that's something that could be expanded on. So that's something to keep in mind for the future post-COVID.
Awesome. Thank you, Mel. All right. All right, if there is nothing else, I wanted to touch on some next steps. So for our meetings, our next check-in meeting is Thursday, April 29th at 9:30 a.m. For your tasks, it'll be to recruit. Make sure people know that this process is going on. We are going to have media releases. We'll have more of a public presence in the very near future, so do be aware of that. Bring people, give me contact information, contact people yourselves and invite them. Whatever works best will be most helpful. And as always, come prepared and ready for a lively discussion of projects, ideas, questions, comments, news on stakeholders. Whatever you bring to the table will be appreciated as always. And consider if more peer group meetings are needed. Let me know if if there's an interest in more peer groups, more peer group meetings, additional people to be included in these groups. Every group is different, and so maybe some groups won't need as many meetings as others, but whatever you feel is best, just let me know. For planning, so think about in the future for our future peer group meetings and for our check-in meetings, how can we prioritize the projects that we already have in our templates? This is going to be integral to implementation because, as we already know, having an implementable plan that is realistic is going to take a lot of thinking about how we prioritize them. So I think that what other counties have done, and I think that this is a smart idea, is to have a phased approach or a tiered approach to projects that we come up with. So thinking in terms of like a tier 1, 2, and 3, having some projects that will be the best bang for our buck and prioritizing them that way. Whatever you think would be most effective for implementing. That's going to be a conversation that we will have in the future a lot. So think about that. And continue to think about what additional programmatic recommendations you have. This is going to be very important for the state to see. If we want these projects to be successful, we need to start thinking about what else we need. Of course, there's always a need for funding. Of course, there's always a need for personnel. But specifically, what could we use to help elevate projects that we have? Think about that. Again, very important for our discussion. Draft number 1 is due Thursday, April 29th. Again, this is the internal draft schedule that we've set to make sure that we stay on track for a final submission of our CAP on September 30th of this year. So draft 1, we will have next month. Any questions on this for meetings or for planning?
I have an input.
Yes, of course.
I got reappointed by the governor to the State Water Plan Advisory Committee and was elected chair of that. And there's a conflict with a meeting that DEP has called for that with the April 29th meeting.
Mm-hmm.
And also, I think maybe the July, I'll have to look at it, but maybe the July meeting as well.
Well, for these check-in meetings, they are all going to be recorded, and I send out meeting notes for these bigger meetings because I know not everybody can attend them, and that's fine. Just as a note, I don't do that for the peer group meetings. So check-in meetings, I do have the recordings on the webpage. I have the notes on the webpage. The presentation is there. And so anything that you miss, it's all right there for you to look at. So that's not a problem.
All right.
Anything else? This is my contact information. If you have any questions or comments or would like to request additional meetings. And for more information, I regularly update the webpage and use this as a resource for sure. Lots of good info in there that I've stolen from DEP and elsewhere. Okay. If nothing else, I thank you all for your time and for your ideas. As always, it's very much appreciated. And I look forward to talking with you in the future and planning with you and thinking about these high-level ideas in more depth and with more folks as stakeholders. So thank you again and have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you, Eve.
Hi, she conducted a good meeting. Okay. Good. Good. Have you got somebody who can go to our Pine Creek Watershed Council meeting? Oh,